Good morning. Welcome to the Community Review on Hot 92.3. I'm Josefa Salinas, your host. We continue our celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month with profiles in life and success. And this is one of our most interesting profiles. Can you even imagine this? Years of captivity in Colombia. You can't talk to anyone. No one can talk to you. And you wonder, are you ever going to be free? Even silence has an end. It's a book about this exact thing that happened to Ingrid Betancourt, and she is with us this morning. Good morning, Ingrid.
Good morning. What an honor and pleasure to be with you this morning.
An absolute honor and pleasure to have you here with us this morning. 6 years of captivity in a Colombian jungle. My goodness. The Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, or FARC, are the ones that abducted you. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
So let's just give if it's possible, to give a quick rundown of why they would want to have abducted you and when that happened.
Well, that happened. I was running for presidency. It was in the middle of the campaign. The reason why they wanted to abduct me, I think it was because the peace talks with the government had ended abruptly, like a couple of days before, and they wanted to make a point that they were strong. That they could, abduct important political figures. At the time, the government was keen in demonstrating to the people of Colombia that the zone where the peace talks had been held was under military control, that the FARC had been evicted. And by abducting me, they were proving that that was not the case, that they were still in control of the zone.
So the FARC would be considered a political organization?
The FARC was considered a political organization, a rebel, illegal political organization. They were communists, and they were saying that they were fighting for getting into power. What I discovered when I was abducted was this was far from reality. I don't think they were truly rebels and truly committed to any political endeavor. I think that what really they were drug traffickers, and they were disguised in rebels in order to favor the possibility of negotiating something with the government, of not being treated and chased as drug traffickers.
So what year was that when you were abducted by FARC?
I was abducted in 2002. I was liberated in 2008.
So 6 years you were held captive. Where did they keep you captive at?
I was in the jungle of Colombia. I mean, the Amazonian jungle has no frontiers. It's huge. I mean, we're talking about millions of square kilometers that go from Brazil, Peru, Ecuador, Bolivia, Colombia. It's half of South America. So it's really a huge territory. And we were held there, and we were moving all the time. Our daily life was marching. I mean, walking from one place to the other in order to just avoid being reached by the Colombian army.
Now you say we, so you were held captive with other people.
Yes. And I say we because we were always in groups. I mean, it was I was with other prisoners, but also the guerrillas. There were, I would say, 70 guerrillas with us all the time. So it was a big group in the jungle moving.
When you were first taken captive, did you believe that you were going to be held, or did you think that you were possibly going to be killed?
The first thing I thought was that I was going to be killed, because at the moment I was abducted, they separated me from the group I was with, and that just triggered me information I had of how they would proceed when they were executing politicians, and they did that. They had done that in the past. They would kill people, and I thought they were going to kill me as well. And, after that, there was this commander that came and just reassured me and said that it was an abduction. So I was kind of relieved. It's strange that I say this because afterwards, if I had the choice, probably I would have chosen to be killed on the spot. I mean, it just, I thought about that many times in the jungle, that what I thought was a relief and better option. I mean, because I didn't know when I was going to be freed. And by the time I had been there for 5 or 6 years, I began thinking that perhaps I didn't want this to go on. Perhaps the other option of being killed was perhaps a better option.
Were the other people that were there when you were abducted, when you were taken prisoner, were they held as long, or did you see people get released while you were there?
The guys that were with me at that day, that were caught with me, were released 2 days after. The only ones that remained in captivity were a girl called Clara that was abducted with me. And then we were transferred to, like a year and a half after, we were transferred to a camp of other prisoners, other hostages. And then we were with 10 other hostages, like in a cage in the middle of the jungle. And that lasted for almost a year. And after that, I was transferred to another group with only men. I was the only woman with 10 more prisoners, almost all of them military and policemen that were caught in fights, in battles. Well, that was the way it happened, yeah.
I can't even begin to imagine what would be going through my mind if I was being held captive. So maybe we could, I know that in your book, it's a fascinating book. The book is called Even Silence Has an End, and you've written about these 6 years in captivity. Could you tell the audience a little bit about how do you get through the days and days and days of silence? Because I see that it says here that they didn't allow people to talk to you.
Yes, I was punished because I attempted to escape many times. So I was the black sheep of the group. And I was punished in daily basis. I was punished with less food, with harsh conditions. I was chained to a tree by the neck for almost 4 years. And one of the punishments was not to be able to talk to anyone, isolation. So for me, it was important to just preserve my emotional balance and my dignity. I think those were the two things. I remember thinking, I'm not going to be able to succeed in protecting my body because I'm too vulnerable, especially as a woman. But I have to protect my soul, and I have to come out of this experience normal, not insane, not like a schizophrenic person. I really need to get in control of my emotions. So that I achieved this by, of course, doing things, and I had a very, tight schedule during the day. I would work out in the morning, I would meditate, I would read whatever I could have under my hand to read. When I had a radio, I would search for radio stations that would give me information or that I could learn something from them. And at night, with the radio, I would tune on the radio stations that would give me information about Colombia. And in the very early morning, around 4 a.m., I would try to listen to the radio stations that would broadcast messages from our families in Colombia, because there are so many hostages. Some radio programs are devoted to just broadcast messages of the families of the people that are kidnapped. And so my mother did that for 6 years and a half. Every day she would send me messages. She didn't know I was listening. She didn't know where I was, if I was alive or dead. But she kept on sending me messages every day.
And you would hear some of those messages?
Yes. I tried to do it every day. And it was very hard and very depressing when I couldn't. And it happened when we were marching, or when I had no more batteries for the radio, or when I couldn't reach, I couldn't hear her because the radio waves wouldn't reach us.
Right, the signal. Mm-hmm.
The signal was not strong enough. So all of those things were, that was our daily life, to try to just be there and try to listen to them, to my mother's message.
That's so interesting to me that they wouldn't allow anyone to speak to you, and yet they would let you have access to a radio. Do you think that they thought perhaps that having access to the radio would actually do you more harm mentally, when in fact it actually helped make you stronger?
I think they needed us to not become crazy. I mean, having crazy people in abduction is a whole lot of extra work. We had some couple of people in our groups that were in that situation, becoming schizophrenic, and it was problems all the time. So I think that in a very savvy way, they would just feel that it was a way of calming us down. It was easier to have hostages calm than have hostages in a aggressive mode.
Did they tell you what the purpose was? What did they hope to gain from keeping you all those years?
I think at the beginning they wanted to make a point in front of the government. I was abducted in a moment where the peace talks with the government had failed, and the government had decided that they were going back to chasing the FARC and not to negotiating a peace process with them. And one of the things that the government wanted to achieve was to evict the FARC from the zone they had held during the peace talks. And the day I was captured, the president was giving a press conference in San Vicente El Caguán, the place where I was supposed to get to, saying that the FARC were evicted from the zone, that the territory was under military control, and that the army was, securing the zone. When the FARC abducted me in the middle of that huge military operation, and that they abducted me, installing a roadblock in the middle where the operation was held, in the middle of thousands of soldiers and helicopters flying on top of us. This was to just tell the government that they were still in control. I mean, they wanted to make the point. They said that they wanted to exchange us for guerrillas that were in jail. But I think that was not the true reason. I think that after some years, it proved for them that keeping us as a trophy was very good in terms of media exposure, and that they could have a micro and speak to the journalists. People would come to see them, to ask about what was happening to us. And that was a way of having some kind of political drive and political exposure that could give them some space to continue doing what they really were doing, which was drug trafficking.
Did you ever have conversations with any of your captors? Did they talk to the prisoners or to you?
It was difficult. Our guards, for example, were very young, between 14 and 18 years old. They were brainwashed, and they were prevented not to speak to us. The commanders would tell them that we were dangerous people, that we were very intelligent, and we were politicians. We would try to turn them against the organization to escape with them. I mean, they were briefed in a way that, and they knew that if they would try to escape with us or help us escape, they would be killed. So there was, the carrot and the stick. And with the commanders, I could speak once at the beginning of my captivity with one of the leaders. And I remember I was surprised to see how little information they had on how the Colombian political system would work. And that was one of the things that made me think that there was the political reflection was missing in the organization. They were strong, military organized. They had, training, military training, but they did not have any political drive. And of course, that's why the peace talks never succeeded. This is why there is no political negotiation today in Colombia for peace process. And I think that really they have shrink into just drug dealers.
Wow. that it's amazing, and then it's not, because when you see so many reports of organizations, I don't even know if we want to call them organizations, groups like this around the world, and you see them grabbing young children who are so easily influenced, and they have so much, especially with young boys, there's all that testosterone that's just loose and ready to fire in any direction. And if you get them riled up and convince them that all of this energy should be spent towards something, and you convince them that it's this particular issue, it's very, very difficult. You don't have to really educate them, because you've got so many of those hormones just raging, and it's so easy to get them passionate and riled up. And when you're 14, you can't really make a whole lot of decisions politically about anything, but you can get very impassioned. And that's a scary combination, to have a very impassioned, uneducated young man with a gun.
And I think that's the purpose, because they know that those teenagers will be able to be cruel in a way that adults perhaps will not, because they don't have any mind frame.
Right, a reference.
References. So it is, and you see, it's something that repeats in the whole planet. We see it in Africa, we see it in the Middle East, how those terrorist organizations are recruiting very young people, because they are the ones that have the force, the aggressivity to do crazy things, and they can be manipulated in an easy way.
Exactly, and then you can get them to move without educating them.
Exactly.
Jeez.
And if they die, in a way, I mean, they're so young that they don't leave a family behind. So. Right. It's always, for those kind of organizations, it's a plus.
Tell me a little bit about having internal strength. I know that, as a woman, I firmly believe that we have a strength inside of us that men will never have, because we are simply made different. Tell me a little bit about your inner strength, and how, when I know there had to be moments when you just said, I cannot go on. And what did you say to yourself to get yourself through those moments?
I think that the point, in our reflection, in comparing with man, is that men have physical strength. So that's their drive. We don't have physical strength, so we're vulnerable. And that leads us to compensate with inner strength. And so for us, things like dignity become, very important, because if we cannot protect our body, we have to protect our dignity, which is more than what can be done in abusing us physically. We have to protect our soul, the respect we have of how we see ourselves. And so all those concepts are very important, and those are the ones who build inner strength. For example, the capacity of saying no. I was thinking, for example, there was this moment where they came in the morning for a roll call, and they just, wake us up shouting, and we had to just count ourselves. And so my fellow hostages began, and the first say 1 and the second 2, and we were supposed to answer with numbers. And when it came to me, I couldn't say a number. I just said my name, Ingrid Betancourt, and I said, if you want to know if I'm here, you just call me by my name. I won't answer to a number. And it was dramatic, because, of course, the guards were very upset, but also my companions, my fellow hostages, were upset against me, because they were saying, now we're in trouble because of you. We're going to be punished. And who do you think you are? You think you're better than everybody? There was this huge kind of, and it was very important for me to just make them, open the discussion and say, no, we cannot accept to be treated as numbers. We are not numbers. We have a name. We have an identity, and we have to fight for that, because we had lost our freedom, but we cannot lose with our freedom our identity. And that was, for me, something that was crucial. And I remember that it became an obsession to just preserve what had to be preserved. The most important things that we, there were things that we could not accept from the guys that had us abducted. And those things were important. For example, at one point, they wanted to change the name of our companions. So if Tom was Tom, they wanted to call him Pedro. And that was something that we couldn't accept because it was damaging to our psychic. Or the same, I mean, many times they wanted to put us in situations that were damaging, like, for example, putting us to live in conditions that were not acceptable. I remember, for example, I was the only woman in a camp with only men, and they opened what they call the chantas, which is the place where you go and like the loo, and it was exposed to everybody. So if you went to, I mean, for men it's different. They just turn around and it's done. But for us it's not the same. And I was the only woman, so I had to refuse to just accept it. So I had to. It was a battle. It was a battle for dignity. It was a battle for consideration, for not being treated as an animal.
Obviously, you made it through 6 years of captivity. The book is Even Silence Has an End. Ingrid Betancourt, 6 years of captivity in the Colombian jungle. In that moment when you knew it was coming to an end, what went through your heart?
It was a mix of emotions, really. Perhaps what I have to tell is that we were in this helicopter and nobody wanted to get into the helicopter because we thought the guerrillas were going to transport us to another camp deeper in the jungle. So there we were, handcuffed, depressed, thinking that we were going to have some more 10 years of horror. And in the helicopter, there was this crew of the helicopter and the commanders of the guerrillas. And the crew of the helicopter, once the helicopter was in the air, began a fight with the commanders of the guerrilla, and they neutralized the commanders. And when the commanders were in the floor, neutralized, this guy screamed, "We are the Colombian army. You're free." And so it was completely unexpected. I remember we all screamed, and in that scream, there were so many things. I mean, of course, the joy of being free, but also the so scared. We were really scared by what was happening to us because from out of the blue, we were forced to face a new life, and we didn't know what to expect. We were not prepared for our freedom in a way.
Right.
It was a very extraordinary moment of contradiction in our emotions. And once we got to Bogota and we came out of the plane, I mean, the emotion of seeing for the first time my mother after 6 years and a half, and then my children when they arrived a day later, looking at them and seeing those adults they had become. At the same time, all in my dreams, I have dreamed to see my children, and I had, tried to fantasize of how they were growing. But when I saw them, they were so much more beautiful than anything I could have imagined. So it was incredible. It was incredible.
Well, the book is even more incredible. I encourage everyone. It's a book you must read to talk about courage and perseverance and dignity and soul and what is possible in the human spirit. Even Silence Has an End. 6 years of Captivity in the Colombian Jungle by Ingrid Betancourt. Ingrid, God bless you and keep you. And thank you so much for writing the book and most of all for being with us this morning and sharing your incredible profile of life and success.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your time and everything. It was an honor really to be with you today.
Well, you are welcome. Mi casa es su casa. Whenever you want to come back, you are welcome here.
Gracias. Una abrazo. Thank you.
What an amazing story. It shows you the true triumph of the human spirit. Coming up next, another amazing profile you're not going to want to miss on Hot 92.3.